Greetings to Madam and my fellow classmates. So we are from Group 5 and today we will be presenting the topic discuss the origin of neoclassical school and we'll also state three extension of economy analysis by a school compared to the earlier classical and marginalist school. So by the way, we'll also include to explain like how Alfred Marshall, who representing neoclassical school, combined the idea of classical school and marginalist school to further explain the theory of value regarding the market price of goods and services. Here is the group members for group 5. My name is Tai Chuan, matrix number 286302. My other group member will introduce themselves accordingly later. Okay, so let's discuss the origin of neoclassical school. So actually the origin is microeconomics thoughts of marginalists is transformed to neoclassical economy. So actually the word neo indicates the meaning of new. So neoclassical school also can be defined as new form of classicism. So neoclassical economics were marginalist because they emphasize the price determination and decision making. So basically, neoclassical school is very unique among the other school because neoclassical school doesn't have five major questions. So neoclassical school is developed from classical and marginalist idea. So the one last thing is the key economists or greatest features in neoclassical school is Alfred Marshall who developing it. Alright, so the next part will be three extension of economy analysis regarding the neoclassical school compared with classical and marginalist school. So the three extension which is value theory, monetary economy, and also imperfect competition market. Okay, so let's come to the first one, value theory first. Alright, so the first one, of course, neoclassical school will be more focused demand and supply in the same time for determining the market price, while classical school only focus on supply alone and marginalist school only focus on demand alone. So the second one, monetary economics. In neoclassical school, the economist pays a greater interest in the role of money. So they develop in the role of money and pay attention to it. While classical and marginalist school more focus on the role of labor or production, and for marginalist school, just view money as a medium of exchange. Alright, let's come to the last one, imperfect competition market. So for neoclassical school, they did further extended their marginal analysis, while classical school did not extend, and marginalist school concept they did develop, but just not that further compared to neoclassical school. Alright, so after studying the previous part, let's move on to some past year questions and how's the question will ask us. Alright, so we can see that in past year of 2018, list another two contribution of neoclassical school in terms of economic analysis compared to earlier marginally besides further improvement in the theory of exchange value. So we'll be focusing on the another two, which is monetary economics and imperfect competition market. So as what I mentioned just now, for the monetary economics, so several neoclassical economists, like for example, Wicksell and Fisher, they did took a greater interest for the role of money in the economy because than did the earlier classical or marginalists. So the second comes to the imperfect competition market. So basically, neoclassical economists extended marginal analysis to the market structures other than pure competition, pure monopoly, and duopoly. Okay, so next will be the focus of our assignment. So this part can be distributed to two parts, which is the first part, the biography and contribution of Alfred Marshall according to the neoclassical school. And the second part will be we would like to compare the classical school, marginalist school, and neoclassical school on the theory of value. And we would like to know about how the economists respond to the question, do peers have value because people die for it, or people die for peers because of its value? Okay, so let's move on to the biography of Alfred Marshall. Alfred Marshall, born on 26th of July 1842 at London and died at 13th of July 1934. Alfred Marshall is well known as the father of neoclassical school, as he is the one developing neoclassical school. So another experience of Alfred Marshall is Alfred Marshall rejected Oxford but went Cambridge for studying maths, physics, and economics. So another fun fact over here is actually Alfred Marshall is helped by his well-to-do uncle because his father is too poor to pay for his tuition fee. So Alfred Marshall is a hypochondriac person also because he's very concerned about his own health. And Alfred Marshall is a very hypercritical person because he have the high expectation about his own writing. So next, Alfred Marshall wrote the famous Principle of Economic books in which is published on the 1890s. Uh, these books have been a standard textbook for British for so many years. So Alfred Marshall also criticized Jevons for rushing into published books because he doesn't want any mistakes on the books when get published. Okay, so this part is the contribution of Alfred Marshall. So the first one, of course, Alfred Marshall combined classical and marginalist idea to form a new concept which is neoclassical school. So Alfred Marshall popularized diagrammatic also as he is a very expert mathematician, but he only applied it in the appendix. So by the way, Alfred Marshall also defined economics as study of mankind in the ordinary business of life. And according to Alfred Marshall, economy is just like scientists because they also collect and arrange data just like a scientist and seek for the knowledge. And the another one would be economics according to Alfred Marshall. Economics not the body of concrete truth, but it's the engine to discover concrete truth. So just like what Alfred Marshall mentioned also, economics laws are equals to social law, which can be measured by financial price. And last but not least, Alfred Marshall also published 82 books and writings, which including the most well-known textbook, Principle of Economics, which have became a standard textbook in British for so many years. Alright, so this section will compare the views of theory of value, which is from the market price of goods and services from the perspective of Adam Smith from classical school, compared with William Stanley Jevons from marginalist school and Alfred Marshall from neoclassical school.
Hi, my name is Li Fang with matrix number 284951. I represent about the theory of value from the perspective of Adam Smith, which is the classical school. There are two kinds of value, which is the value in use and value in exchange. Value in use is the utility of some particular object. Things which have greater value in use have frequently little or no value in exchange. For example, water has greater value in use but little value in exchange. Value in exchange is the power of purchasing other goods, which the possession of that object conveys. Those have frequently little or no value in use have greater value in exchange, such as the diamond. Next, we will discuss about the diamond water paradox of value, why water is cheap and diamonds are expensive, although water is on the whole more useful in terms of survival than diamonds. Diamonds command a higher price in the market. Water have greatest value in use but little value in exchange, even though it is necessary to life, and diamond has little value in use but greatest value in exchange, even it is not essential to life. Adam Smith is failed to solve the diamond water paradox because he did not understand the concept of total utility and marginal utility and the law of diminishing marginal utility. The law of diminishing marginal utility holds that as we consume more of an item, the amount of satisfaction produced by each additional unit of that good declines. So, as a result, Adam Smith directed his analysis only on the value in exchange. He discussed his theory of value in primitive society and advanced economy. So, according to the labor theory of value in primitive society by Adam Smith, he argued that labor was the only resource. The relative value of a good will be determined by the amount of labor that necessary to produce the good. Value of any commodity to a person who possesses it, if he wished to exchange it for other commodities, is equal to the quantity of labor which it enables him to purchase of command. The Smith deer beaver example had given a look to the labor theory of value in primitive society. In the example shows that, suppose that it took 2 hours to trap a beaver and 1 hour to hunt and shoot a deer. The value of exchange in beaver should be 2 deer or 2 hours of labor since it took 2 hours to trap a beaver. A person could either exchange the beaver for 2 deer because each deer requires only 1 hour of labor to harvest, and this is called the labor cost, or he can exchange the beaver with command 2 hours of labor service, and this is called the labor command. According to this example, the labor cost is equal to the labor command. Besides, according to the labor theory of value discussed by Adam Smith in Advanced Economy, he realized that the growth of capital will invalidate a simple labor cost theory of value. Normally, goods will be exchanged with other goods for money or labor at a figure high enough to cover wages, rent, and profit. The profit will depend on the whole value of capital advanced by employer. However, due to the growth of capital, the real value of commodities can no longer be measured by the labor content in them, but they can still measure by the quantity of labor which they can, each of them, purchase of command. The quantity of labor that a commodity can buy will exceed the quantity of labor embodied in its production by the total profits and rent. Due to this, the labor cost is smaller than the labor command. So, in conclusion, Adam Smith emphasized supply as the significant determinant of exchange value. There's a question about the value of pearl, which is, do pearls have value because people need to dive for them, or do people dive for pearls because pearls have value? And according to Adam Smith's opinion, pearls have value is because people need to dive for them, which means the cost of production will determine a good's exchange value, which is the price of the goods. That's all from me. Thank you.
Good day, I'm Waiting with metric number 2X6983. We'll be presenting William Stanley Jevons from Marginally School. According to Jevons, utility cannot be measured directly, but can only be estimated by observing human behavior. Therefore, Jevons have used graphical analysis to explain the law of variation of finite degree of utility of a commodity, which is shown on current slide. Now let's look at the graph at the top. The vertical axis measures total utility or TU, whereas the horizontal axis measures the quantity of X consumed. TU rises or increases when quantity of X increases. However, if you look closely, TU is increasing at the law of diminishing rate, which means a successive of unit of X will add less to TU or total utility than the previous unit. Now let's proceed to the graph at the bottom. The vertical axis measures marginal utility of total utility or changes in total utility, which is equivalent to finite degree of utility according to Jevons. Marginal utility decreases as the quantity of X increases. Classical economists, including Adam Smith, has been puzzled by the paradox of water and diamonds. However, this paradox of water and diamonds have been solved by Jevons by launching the law of diminishing marginal utility. Jevons' law of diminishing marginal utility explains that the total utility of water is larger than the total utility of diamonds. This is because water is very useful compared to diamonds in our daily life. We humans can not survive without water, but we can survive without the excess of diamonds. However, on the finite degree of utility or marginal utility of diamonds are greater than the marginal utility of water. It is because diamonds are very valuable compared to water, and water has abundant stock of lead which is very easy to access for by human beings. We humans would rather have an additional unit of diamonds compared to an additional unit of water. Hence, the marginal utility of diamond is greater than the marginal utility of water. In short, Germans has emphasized that demand or utility play a role as the significant determinant of price of a commodity. The cost of production, such as labor price or labor wage, will determine the supply of the commodity. If the cost of production is high, then the supply will be low. If the cost of production is low, and the supply will be high. Next, the supply will also determine the marginal utility of a commodity, and marginal utility will determine the value of the commodity. Unlike Ricardo, who say that pearls have value because people die for them, but Jevons is saying that pearls have value because the buyers of pearls get utility from buying the pearls. And people who die for pearls is because pearls have that value. That's all from me. Thank you.
This is the past year question for 2018 first semester, question 3A. Discuss the conflict between value in use and value in exchange in water-diamond paradox observed by Adam Smith. Explain how this problem solved by William Stanley Jevons from the Marginalist School. The conflict between value in use and value in exchange in water-diamond paradox observed by Adam Smith shows that water has greatest value in use but little value in exchange, even though it is necessary to life, and diamonds have little value in use but greatest value in exchange, even it is not essential to life, but diamonds command a higher price in the market. The problem is solved by William Stanley Jevons from the Marginalist School by explaining the concept of total utility, marginal utility, and the law of diminishing marginal utility. Total utility is the total satisfaction a person receives from consuming a particular quantity of a good. Marginal utility is additional utility a person receives from consuming an additional unit of a particular good. And the law of diminishing marginal utility is gained by consuming equal successive units of a good will decline as the amount consumed increase. According to William Stanley Jevons, the total utility of water is high because water is extremely useful, and total utility of diamonds is low because diamonds is not as useful as water. However, prices do not reflect total utility but marginal utility. The marginal utility of water is low because water is plentiful, but marginal utility of diamonds is high because diamonds is scarce. As a result, the additional unit of water will give us less utility, which is less in marginal utility than the additional unit of diamonds. So, people would rather have an additional diamond than an additional unit of water given large stock of water. That's all for question 3A. Thank you.
Alright, as usual, after looking at the previous part, so let's move on to the past year questions. So the questions 3A. Adam Smith from the classical school did not solve the water diamond paradox because he failed to understand the concept of utility. So we need to explain how this paradox is solved by William Stanley Gibbons from the marginalist school by using the law of diminishing marginal utility. So at first, Adam Smith thought that utility had nothing to do with the amount of exchange because water was much more useful than the diamond, but diamond were more valuable than water. But actually, Gibbons has explained it by using law of diminishing marginal return, marginal utility. Sorry. So the principle of diminishing marginal utility shows that the MU marginal utility of diamonds is greater than MU of water because diamond is so much more expensive, limited, and valuable. But water is like very cheap and very easy to get. So although the TU, total utility of water, is greater than TU of diamond, this is because uh, water is much more useful than diamonds, but the additional of 1 unit of utility of diamond is much more greater than water. So MU of diamond is greater than MU of water. So in conclusion, one is much more valuable, one is much more useful. Okay, so Jawan used the same reason to show that gambling does not pay, but insurance does. So for gambling, the MU of money lost is greater than the MU of an equal money of money won. So in the case of insurance, the MU of premiums paid for insurance actually is lesser than the marginal utility of the large amount we may lose without insurance. So actually, Javon uh, have do, did a basic explanation about this, but not yet extended it to a very formal theory.
Hello everyone, my name is Wong Wai Lun. My metric number is 2x4xx5. Now I will continue presentation regarding the Alfred Marshall on value theory. Alfred Marshall is the founder of neoclassical school because he combined the classical economics and marginalist thinking to form a neoclassical school. Demand and supplies to determining market price of goods, service, and resources. The relationship among supply, demand, and price tend to produce certain results if they are allowed to work by themselves, but society can influence the outcome if it so desires. Next is demand. Demand is based on the law of diminishing marginal utility. Alfred Marshall also introduced two important qualifications. First is moment in time, second is indivisible. Marshall's system dealt with pressure and pains, desires and aspiration, and incentive to action. Next, let's move on how to measure utility that intangible. Measure utility preference according to financial scale of payment. Take for example, buy shoe or hat. If you think shoes are twice as useful to you as a hat, So you are willing to pay twice as much for shoe as compared to hair because you are willing to pay twice as much for shoe as for hair. So we can conclude that the shoe you twice as much utility to you. Rational consumer choice is assume that consumers behave in a way that maximize their utility or satisfaction through the consumption of good or service. In money economics, Alfred Marshall said each line of expenditure will be pushed to the point at which marginality utility of a dollar's worth of goods will be the same as in any other direction of spending. Formula is marginal utility X over price X equal marginal utility Y over price Y. Marshall successfully tied this equal marginal rule directly to the contemporary law of demand. Next is law of demand. What is law of demand? As we all know, law of demand is the price of good increase, the quantity demand will decrease. Otherwise, the price of good decrease, the quantity demand will increase. The relationship is negative relationship. Alfred Marshall have a clear concept of difference between change in quantity demanded and change in demand. Change in quantity demanded is movement along the demand curve, while change in demand is shift in demand curve. When the price of good air is full, two effects are what that increase the quantity purchased, which is substitution effect and income effect. Next, let's move on to consumer surplus. Consumer surplus is the difference between the total expenditure consumer are willing to pay and what they actually pay. The price a person pay for a goods not exceed and seldom equal which consumer willing to pay rather than go without desired object. Take for example, let's say that you want to buy an AirAsia ticket for a flight to Disneyland during school holiday week for 100 ringgit, but you were expecting and willing to pay 300 ringgit for one ticket. The 200 ringgit will represent your consumer surplus. Next is elasticity of demand. The formula of elasticity of demand is percentage change in quantity divided by percentage change in price. Next, we look on the graph provided. In graph A, E greater than 1 so we call is elastic. In graph B, E less than 1 we call inelastic. In graph C, E equal to 1 we call unelastic. In graph D, E equal to infinity, so we call perfectly elastic. And last one, E equal to 0, we call perfectly inelastic.
Good day, madam. My name is Yu Xuntao, metric number 2X6057. Today, I will present about the supply side. According to the Alfred Marshall, he say supply determined by cost of production, and he divide time into three periods, which is long run, short run, and immediate present. Alright, in the immediate present, the time frame is too short, so it cannot suddenly increase or decrease the supply even though the demand show the increase or decrease. And the curve show the perfectly inelastic. In the short run, the variable input can be changed, but fixed cost cannot be changed. It got two costs in the short run, which is supplementary cost and prime cost. Supplementary cost is a fixed cost, which include the executive salary, and the prime cost is equal to the variable cost, which include the labor and raw material cost. In the short run, the higher the product price, the higher the supply. Okay, for the third one is long run. In the long run, all costs are variable. The increase in price, such as total revenue larger than total cost, will cause the capital will enter the industry and let the market supply increase. If the price fall below the average cost, capital will reduce and probably the firm will exit the industry. Supply is seen in terms of finance and subjective cost and the demand based on utility and diminishing marginal utility. Period of production, input and cost. In the short run, inputs use only have two, which is fixed and variable. And of course, only have fixed cost and variable cost. Fixed cost means that costs that do not change as output change. And variable cost means that costs that change as output change. So, and then in the long run, only got variable input have been used and only got variable cost. Marshall's determination equilibrium. The Hickory and bargaining of the market will result in a price close to 36, where it is exactly equal quantity demanded and supply 600. Okay, when the price is 37 and 35, they show the demand and supply is unequilibrium. So they will through the Hickory and bargaining and let the demand and supply reach a equilibrium point, and the price is 36. Summary: the neoclassical school emphasized demand and supply as the significant determinant of price. Marshall us introduced the concept of consumer and producer surplus, added the element of time in economic analysis, illustrate the idea of equilibrium price and quantity. Marshall's opinion on the value of fuel. Do fuel have value because people need to die for them, or do people die for fuel because fuel have value? According to the Marshall opinion, both statements are correct. Fuel have value because people need to die for them, and people die for fuel because fuel have value. This is the graph representation about the Marshall equilibrium price and quantity. The point E is the equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity. Marshall also presented the idea of a consumer surplus and producer surplus, which show the figure as BCE and ABE. In the conclusion, Adam Smith emphasized supply as a significant determination of exchange value, and the Joyce emphasized demand as the significant determinant of price. The neoclassical school emphasized both of the demand and supply as a significant determinant of price.
Compare and contrast the views of classical, marginalist, and neoclassical school on value determination by referring to the following statement. Do pearls have value because people die for them, or do people die for pearls because pearls have value? According to Adam Smith, the view of classical school on value determination by referring to the statement is that pearls have value because people need to die for them. The views of classical school shows that the cost of production will determine a good's exchange value, which means the price of a good is determined by the cost of production. However, the view of marginalist school is completely different from the view of classical school. The view of marginalist school on value determination discusses that people die for pearls is because pearls have value. This is because the buyers will get utility from the pearls. Meanwhile, the view of neoclassical school on value determination is that both of the statements are correct. According to the Marshall's opinion on the values of pearls, the cost of production will determine the value of pearls because people need to die for them, and people die for the pearls is also because buyers will get utility from the pearls. That's all for question 3B. Thank you.
I'm going to explain the definitions of Marshall's law of demand. In Marshall's law of demand, ceteris paribus assumption is applied during short term, which means determinants other than the goods price, such as the consumer's preference, the consumer purchasing power of money, and also price of substitute goods are held constant. However, the determinants I mentioned just now will change in long term. This causes the entire demand curve to shift to the left or to the right. Marshalls also make a clear difference between changes in quantity demanded and also changes in demand. Changes in quantity demanded, which means the quantity demanded will move along the curve, and changes in demand will causes the entire demand curve to shift either to the left or to the right. Nevertheless, Marshall also assumes that the purchasing power of money is constant or remain the same, but this is inconsistent to say so. It is because when the price of good air drops, there are actually two effects occurring, which are substitution effect and also income effect. so that the quantity demanded will increase. However, Marshall only focuses on substitution effect and ignores income effect. Now I'm going to explain how Marshall's law of demand is related to equimarginal rule, the law of diminishing marginal utility, and also consumer surplus. Firstly, the equimarginal rule. It is indivisible because a small quantity of a commodity may be inadequate to meet a certain one, and there will be more than proportional increase of pleasure when the customer gets enough of it to enable him to attain the desired end. Or in easier sentences, unlimited wants of someone but limited sources of income. Next, the law of diminishing marginal utility. Marginal utility of a commodity to anyone diminish or decrease with every increase in the amount of it he has already had. The table below shows the price per unit of a good and also the quantity demanded of the good in units. Let's assume the market price of the good is Rm5 and the quantity demanded of the good is 7 units. The total utility of the good can be gained by summing up the price per unit, which is 22 plus 16 plus 14 and so on, and the answer is 79. Since we have assumed that Rm5 is the market price of the good and the quantity demanded at the market price is 7, so the total price will be 5 times 7, which is 35. There are two ways to get the consumer surplus. Firstly, we use the total utility, which is 79, minus the total market price, and we will get 44. And the second way, we need to use the price per unit minus the market price. For example, the first one, 22 minus 5, we will get 17, and followed by 16 minus 5, we will get 11, and so on. And we will be summing up all the answers to get the consumer surplus, which is also 44. In short, consumer surplus is an area below the demand curve but above the market price. There are three improvements made by neoclassical school towards economy analysis compared to classical and marginalist school. Firstly, neoclassical school stress both demand and supply in determining the market prices of certain goods, services, and also resources. However, the early economists only stress demand only. Secondly, according to neoclassical school, there are greater interest in the role of money in the economy. Third, marginal analysis has been extended to market structures other than pure competition, pure monopoly, and also duopoly.